Governments and institutions worldwide have issued a unified mandate: transition the global economy away from fossil fuels. Yet beneath the policy bowls, the macroeconomic system remains tethered to crude oil. This reliance is not driven by political inertia or historical accident. It is enforced by the strict, non-negotiable mathematics of physical chemistry. Look at this comparison of specific kinetic output. Heavy fuel oil yields roughly 44 megajoules of energy per kilogram. By contrast, the absolute limit of modern commercial lithium-ion batteries sits at roughly 0.7 megajoules per kilogram. Liquid hydrocarbons pack roughly 60 times more energy by weight than our best commercial battery tech. That colossal gap in energy density provides the raw kinetic force required to move heavy freight across the planet. Decoupling the world from oil means defeating the stubborn physical limitations of alternative energy storage. You cannot legislate away the laws of physics. During the first industrial revolution, coal unlocked entirely new scales of human productivity. But as a heavy, solid fuel, it was logistically constrained, restricting economic networks to relatively localized regions. The modern energy era shifted to liquid. Discoveries like Colonel Drake's 1859 well in Pennsylvania, and later the massive Spindletop find in Texas, proved that oil could be tapped at scale. Petroleum offered immediate logistical advantages. As a liquid, it was far easier to extract, pump through long-distance pipelines, and store in large terminal facilities. The global shift accelerated after the Second World War. An explosion in consumer demand and the mass proliferation of the internal combustion engine across automotive assembly lines demanded a fuel infrastructure that coal could not provide. Historically, energy transitions were slow, organic shifts driven by absolute logistical superiority. Today's push for decarbonization attempts to force a transition at a highly accelerated pace, contrasting sharply with the market-driven adoptions of the past. The global commercial shipping industry operates as the physical circulatory system of the economy. It is responsible for moving roughly 80% of all international merchandise trade from port to port. This maritime network runs almost exclusively on heavy fuel oil. The high 44 megajoule per kilogram density allows commercial container ships to transport massive volumes of cargo over transcontinental distances without stopping to refuel. Consider the engineering required to cross the Pacific Ocean using 0.7 megajoule per kilogram lithium-ion batteries. In a standard vessel, liquid fuel tanks occupy a relatively small space deep inside the hull, leaving the rest of the ship open for profit-generating cargo. To achieve the same kinetic output with current battery architectures, the sheer size and weight of the required battery arrays would rapidly expand outward, physically displacing the commercial containers the ship is designed to carry. The space meant for payload is consumed by the fuel source itself. The voyage instantly becomes economically unviable. Until engineers develop a scalable alternative with comparable energy density, long-haul oceanic trade remains captive to liquid petroleum. The abundance of cheap, reliable petroleum directly enabled a structural evolution in global manufacturing, the just-in-time model pioneered by Toyota in post-war Japan. This operates on a rigorous zero-inventory approach. Components are delivered to the factory floor exactly when required for assembly, eliminating the massive real estate and capital costs associated with storing buffer stock. This highly optimized model effectively treats the entire international logistics network of diesel freight trucks and container ships as a single, massive, continuously moving warehouse. This system is structurally fragile. It assumes global transportation will always be rapid, frictionless, and incredibly cheap to operate. When global petroleum supplies are disrupted, the cost of operating these rolling warehouses skyrockets. The profit margins and operational viability of the entire manufacturing engine are paralyzed. The physical geography of the global oil trade creates highly concentrated vulnerabilities. Approximately 76% of all petroleum must navigate the world via seaborne trade routes. This satellite image captures the Strait of Hormuz. It is the most critical transit choke point on Earth, historically responsible for carrying 20% of total global oil consumption through an incredibly narrow waterway. In early 2026, extreme military threats led to the immediate cancellation of maritime insurance, forcing the functional closure of the strait to commercial shipping. The physical disruption was staggering.
140 million barrels of oil were instantly stranded behind the choke point. With limited alternative pipelines available, regional producers were forced to immediately shut in 10 million barrels per day in production. The macroeconomic shockwave hit global markets instantly. The spot price for Brent crude spiked from $71 to $94 per barrel within days, carrying dire projections of $150 if the disruption held. The geographic confinement of these massive liquid energy flows grants unmatched, dangerous leverage to regional powers. They hold a physical grip over the global economy.
That geopolitical leverage translates directly into immediate damage within global labor markets and civilian livelihoods. This dual line graph visualizes comprehensive IMF data tracking contractionary oil shocks across 89 countries. On the right, oil exporters see an economic boost, but on the left, oil importing nations suffer a violent drop below the baseline. When a supply shock hits importing nations, aggregate production costs spike. This forces rapid shifts in consumer demand, driving the unemployment rate to peak 0.6 percentage points above the baseline and stay elevated for over 4 years. The demographic damage is highly granular. Men suffer severe immediate employment drops due to their statistical overrepresentation in heavy construction, mining, and freight industries that stall first under high fuel costs. Conversely, women face persistent, enduring employment degradation. As the initial industrial contraction worsens, it inevitably spills over into the service-oriented and informal sectors of the economy. Sudden oil price spikes function as a violent, regressive tax. They systematically destroy labor stability and industrial output across importing nations. Combustion for kinetic energy is only the most visible use of petroleum. Its most irreplaceable function is hidden in manufacturing, serving as the raw molecular feedstock for over 6,000 vital products. Decoupling from oil requires completely reinventing modern material science. 99% of all pharmaceutical reagents, synthetic textiles, and the synthetic ammonia-based fertilizers that secure global crop yields are derived directly from petrochemicals. In fact, the petrochemical industry, not the transportation sector, is currently driving the majority of global oil demand. In 2024, chemical feedstocks represented roughly 70% of total volumetric demand growth. And if the Paris Agreement targets successfully collapse global hydrocarbon demand, it presents an existential threat to 40 nations currently classified as heavily dependent petrostates. A permanent drop-off in global oil demand threatens a catastrophic present value loss of between $12 trillion and $14 trillion in sovereign rents. For these nations, that mathematically equates to the collapse of their macroeconomic fundamentals. Forcing a rapid global energy transition presents immense systemic risks. It threatens the physical supply chains of the West and the raw socio-economic survival of millions in the developing world. This sets up the central institutional friction of our era. The International Energy Agency releases aggressive models calling for peak fossil fuels this decade, while OPEC projects sustained demand growth well into 2050. There is genuine progress. Massive expansions in global solar generation and electric vehicle fleets are actively displacing vulnerabilities in the passenger transport and electricity sectors. Yet the stubborn realities remain: the unyielding physics of maritime logistics, the reliance of just-in-time manufacturing on cheap liquid fuels, and the lack of scalable alternatives for heavy industrial chemistry cannot be ignored. Transitioning the global macroeconomy requires multi-trillion-dollar capital investments sustained over several decades, simply to replicate the raw utility that oil inherently provides today. Until those systemic alternatives achieve genuine parity in cost, scale, and energy density, petroleum will remain the indispensable bedrock of modern human civilization.